Well, it's time once again for movie reviews on Pure 24/7 Radio. I'm Nathan Thomas, and I'm joined once again by the one and only Andy Godfrey. Hi, Andy.
It's a good job there is one, and only some people say. Morning, Nathan, and good morning to everyone listening. Great to be
Yes,
on with you again.
yes, an absolute privilege to have you with me once again
Oh,
for
thank
movie
you.
reviews as we look at some of the most recent releases, find out what's going on at home, and maybe occasionally hear about a film that was not so good.
We'll save that. Last week we started with the rant about the Tom Hanks film here, which is
Ah, yes.
terrible. So we'll save the terrible one for a few minutes, shall we?
All
And
right,
start with something positive.
that sounds good.
Okay. So I've got three films to see at the cinema, which I've
Yep.
seen at the cinema this week. One of them I'll just brush over briefly because some people may wonder what it's all about. So a film called Presents, Presence, not Christmas presents. This is a film about a haunted house. Um, a young girl has died of a drugs overdose, and her best friend's family are buying the house. The twist here is that we see everything from the point of view of the ghost. Now, I did some research. I don't think I've ever really seen this done before. The idea that we see everything through the eyes of the ghost who is
Interesting.
haunting these people. There's a big problem with this film. It's just not creepy. It's just not scary, and it's just not atmospheric enough. I mean, at the beginning we sort of get a tour of the house, and I never felt it was anything more than a bloke holding a steady cam walking around the house. It just didn't create any atmosphere. It didn't create, even when the ghost starts to make her presence felt to the people in the house. There's just nothing. It wasn't scary. It was just, again, a neat idea, a bit like we talked about here last week. It just doesn't work. So I was quite disappointed because I thought, again, 2 weeks running now we've had films that have got really good ideas. Yeah, here let's look at one bit of land over the centuries, and Presence, let's see the action unfold through the eyes of a ghost. But it just doesn't. I just kept thinking, there's a guy holding a camera walking along. There was no creepiness about it. There was no atmosphere to it. It felt very, very flat. So that's Presence that people might see. The one I really want to focus on this week, if we can, Nathan, is a film called The Brutalist. Now, this has been nominated for 10 Oscars.
Wow.
Now, it wasn't showing at my local Cineworld, for which I have a membership card. So I had to pay a little bit extra this week and go and see it in the local Odeon, where it was showing. I was surprised Cineworld aren't showing it because, as I say, it's been nominated for 10 Oscars. The problem with it is it's 3.5 hours long. Now, that said, you get a 15-minute break, and you get on the screen, it comes up intermission. You get a still from the film and a 15-minute clock counting down.
Oh, wow.
So effectively, the film's 3 hours, 15 minutes long. But it gives you an intermission, gives you a chance to get up and stretch your legs. This is a story about a man who is a Jewish who arrives in America just after the Second World War. We discover that he's a qualified architect, but he's a Hungarian Jewish refugee, and he arrives in America. He's got a cousin in New York who runs a furniture shop, and because this guy's an architect, because this guy's got certain skills, his cousin says, "Yeah, when you come to America as a refugee, you can come and live with me." His wife is still in Europe, so for the first section of the film's divided into three chapters, two chapters and an epilogue. First section of the film, he's in New York, he's making his way, he's trying to make furniture, and he gets employed by a very wealthy businessman who says, "I would like you to come and build a community centre in our town. I've got this bit of land, it's a lovely bit of land. My mother's died. I want a community centre in her name. I want it to double as a church. I want it to double as something where Muslims could come. I want to have a swimming pool. I want to have a gym. I want to have a library, all within the confines of this one building." And he starts designing this building. And right at the top is a cross. And he designs it in such a way that when people walk into the church or the religious area, the cross, when the sun's out, the shadow of the cross shines down and forms a perfect cross on the altar stone at the beginning when you walk in. So the second half of the film, his wife joins him, and things start going badly for him. He's decommissioned from his work. Somebody else takes over this project. He then gets back on the project. And by the end of the film, we see that he's actually designed about 20 iconic buildings around the world throughout his life, because the film sort of skips to the end of his life. Now, I sat watching this film about a Jewish refugee architect arriving in America at the end of the Second World War. And I'm thinking, well, I haven't heard of this guy, Eli Toth, that's his name. And then at the end, we're shown all these other buildings that he's built in other countries. And I'm sat there thinking, is this a true story? This has to be a true story, because it's portrayed as a true story. You get the characters feel so real, so lifelike. And yet it comes up on the screen, this is a work of fiction. It's a total and utter work of fiction. But I was sat watching the whole thing, convinced that by the end of it, we were going to get the obligatory notes about this guy's life and his family and his work and when he died and so on. None of that. They have done a really great job in this film of making you feel that what you are watching actually happened. And I can understand why it's been nominated for 10 Oscars. It is a really smashing film. It is intriguing. As I say, there is a reason for the way he designs his first building, which we discover only right at the end. And I don't want to give too much away, but it has to do with the Holocaust, because he's a Holocaust survivor. So it was interesting. I saw this a couple of days before Holocaust Memorial Day, which we had this week. And I've been to Auschwitz, 5 or 6 times when I've been in Poland, taking people and showing people around. So it is a really, really good, solid film. If you've got the time, it's a 12A certificate. It's 3.5 hours, but that does include a 15-minute interval, as I say. The performances are good. The score is lovely. And I sat there absolutely convinced, as I know other film critics did, who went in not knowing anything about it, thinking, wow, this guy's amazing. This guy's one of the world's great architects. Look at these buildings he's designed. And it's all purely a work of fiction. So it's long. It's a work of fiction. But when you're sat watching it, they have done such a brilliant job. I was totally convinced I was going to discover this guy was real and so on. And it's a lovely film. And I mean, watch out for it at the Oscars. I think possibly, and I hate to say this, but I think possibly it will get more Oscars than Wicked. I think it's definitely in the running to be Best Picture at the Oscars. We'll talk about the Oscars nearer the time, and the nominations are all out. And I really thought it was a good film. I really enjoyed it. Just this simple story about an architect making good. So, yeah, go see The Brutalist if you've got the time. And again, worth seeing on the big screen, because they filmed it in VistaVision. Now, the difference between VistaVision and CinemaScope is when the picture is narrow and wide. VistaVision is the picture's taller than it normally needs to be, but still widescreen. But it's not so narrow; it's wider, and they've done that so that you can see these buildings that this architect has built in all their glory. It's a really good, solid film. It will win some Oscars. Wouldn't be surprised if it wins the acting awards. Wouldn't be surprised if it wins Best Picture. It's called The Brutalist. It's really good. That's in cinemas. Also in cinemas, and here comes the real rant this week. We have a new film by Mel Gibson. Now, Mel Gibson is a very accomplished director, and we know he was an actor. He's been in a few films in the last couple of years. So Mel Gibson made, of course, The Passion of the Christ. He's working on the sequel at the moment, which is called Passion of the Christ, the Resurrection. So that's going to be interesting to see. He made a film called Heartbreak Ridge about a pacifist who's a member of an army troop in World War II, goes onto the battlefield and saves lives and gives Bibles to the troops and so on. Heartbreak Ridge is a brilliant film, lovely, fantastic film. And he made a film called Apocalypto, which was about Native American Indians. So Mel Gibson can make good films. This is not one of them. But it's really interesting because one of the stars of this film is Mark Wahlberg. And Mark Wahlberg, like Mel Gibson, is also a Christian. You never know it from the character that he plays in this film. When you look at the poster for Flight Risk, you see Mark Wahlberg's face, okay? And he's looking angry and he's bloodstained and, he's obviously been through the mill. Mark Wahlberg is the face on the poster, but really has very little to do in the film. It's really not his film. What we have is a U.S. Marshal who is taking a criminal, who is taking somebody who has said that they will testify against the mafia to a safe house, but she has to fly him there. Mark Wahlberg plays the pilot, but all is not as it seems. The acting is, it pains me to say this because Mark Wahlberg's in it. The acting is terrible. The script is terrible. You've got three people on a plane. One of them a bad guy, one of them a US Marshal, one of them somebody who's going to testify against the. And it turns out that the pilot has been put in that plane to kill the other guy in the plane because he's going to testify against the mafia, and the mafia put this guy in place. Honestly, it's rubbish. I have never seen. It's only been a week since I've heard such bad dialogue, since I've heard such lumpen acting. Mark Wahlberg, for some reason, his character is bald. You can see that Mark Wahlberg is wearing a cap to make him look bald. Why they needed to do that, I haven't got a clue. Why they needed to make this, there's no logical reason for it. There is no logical reason for the setup. If you're a US Marshal taking somebody who's going to give, going to be a witness against the mafia to a safe place, you don't hire any old plane, the first plane you can get your hands on. You've got security. There are at least two of you. And you keep him chained up and you keep him in a secure place. The whole plot falls down. The best acting in the film, at one point, she has to fly the plane. And she's on the radio to some of her colleagues saying, we're coming, but I'm trying to fly this plane, but I don't know what I'm doing. And the plane swoops down and up and, it's going to crash and then it's not going to crash and all the rest of it. The best acting is done by the voice on the radio, genuinely, by somebody who isn't in the film. And I sat there and thought, well, you're the only good thing about this film because it's so obvious, it's so poor, it's pointless. It's one of those pointless films I've seen in a very long time. It's not exciting. It doesn't get the heart thumping. It doesn't get the blood pumping. It's another candidate already for worst film of the year. The score is very good. The score, I sat through the end credits because I was loving the musical score. But the film itself, about these three people on a plane, absolutely terrible. I mean, just awful. Please, people, do not go and see it. And that's a disappointment because I love Mel Gibson's films. I love Mark Wahlberg. Mark Wahlberg is usually very, very reliable. I mean, check out a film of his called Father Stew, where he plays a real life character who was a bit of a ruffian and became ended up becoming a Christian, became a Roman Catholic priest, actually. But check out Father Stew. That's a great film. In this, he's terrible. The direction is all over the place. The plane's all over the place. The timeline gets skewed. 1 minute it's 10 minutes to landing, and the next minute it's 15 minutes to landing, and we're all looking at our watches thinking, just land the blooming plane, So it is a really poor. I was looking forward to it. Mel Gibson, Mark Wahlberg, thriller. What could go wrong? In this case, everything. Absolutely everything, bar the score. So those are the three that I've seen at the cinema this week. And of the three, I would say The Brutalist, which, as we say, is a big contender for the main prizes at the Oscars. I mean, go see The Brutalist. It is very, very good. And it's a very moving story. Once his wife joins him in the second part of the film, it gets very moving. Yeah. So that's good. Just to mention, if I may, then, so there were three films coming out in the cinema today.
Yeah.
None of which I've seen, but we will mention them. So the first one is Companion. This is very topical. This is about a relationship that a guy is having with an AI robot that goes wrong. Okay, so this robot goes a bit mental and doesn't do what it's supposed to do. Okay, so watch out for that. That's called Companion. That looks quite good. Hard Truths is another film that's out by director Spike Lee. Now, director Spike Lee makes domestic dramas. So this is about a woman who hates the world. She thinks the world hates her. She's incredibly paranoid. I actually saw the actress playing her interviewed. Her name is Mary Jean Baptiste. Mary Jean Baptiste. I saw her being interviewed a few weeks ago at an event I was at. she hates the world, she hates her family, she hates everybody basically. There's a scene where she's in the supermarket and the girl is counting, on the till is going through her items, and she just turns around at this girl and says, "What have you got to smile about?" So she hates the girl behind the till at the supermarket. Honestly, it looks great, but the thing with Spike Lee films is he doesn't have a script. He gets a group of actors in a room. This is how he works. He says, right, the basic concept is this. We've got a woman who doesn't like the world, doesn't like anybody, but needs to reconnect with her sister. Go ahead and film it. Make it up. Make up the dialogue as you go along. This scene is about a woman in a hairdresser's having a conversation with her sister standing next to her. Go for it. He doesn't have a script. That's the way Mike Lee works with his film. Yeah. What did I say? Yeah, Mike Lee works. It's just amazing, and he's made some brilliant films. So I'm really looking forward to this one. I think it'll be quite fun and quite funny. And then the third one that's out today is a film called Saturday Night. So back in the early 70s, there was a TV comedy show in America that ran for a very long time called Saturday Night Live, featured all the major comedians of the day doing sketches and playing pranks and so on. And this is the story of how that show came to be, Saturday Night Live. So those are the three films that are out, Nathan. Companion, a film about AI going wrong, and that topical. Hard Truths, a film about a woman who hates the world. And thirdly, a film called Saturday Night Live, which is about that particular American comedy show. So those are the cinema ones. We can move on to home viewing if you like.
Yeah, I just want to think actually. You're saying
Go
talk
on.
about the Brutalist. That's actually really timely when we consider it was International Holocaust Remembrance Day not very long
Yeah,
ago.
it was, and it was Monday of this week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
As I say, we used to do a lot of work in Poland when I was a missionary. I think I mentioned this in the film called A Real Pain, where the
Oh
two young
yes.
lads were having a guided tour of Poland. And I've spent a lot of time in Poland, and I've been to Auschwitz 6 or 7 times
Wow.
because I was taken the first time. And then when I was traveling with colleagues, and we were in that part of the world, I would take them. And Auschwitz is just, I mean, there's one gas chamber still standing, and you walk in there, and it is just, it's hard to breathe. It's hard to comprehend what happened in this room, that you are this concrete bunker that you are standing in, in this room, on this spot where I'm standing, millions of people died, and then you turn the corner and you go into the room next door, which is the where the others are, where they burnt the bodies, and then you go out to Auschwitz-Birkenau and you see all the barracks where the people lived, and it is just the most awful, awful place to visit. I mean, I've seen people there being physically ill at what they're looking at,
Wow.
because it's just sickening. There's one room in Auschwitz itself, in the main camp, where there was a glass cabinet, probably longer than the room you're sitting in, and it's just full of scalps. I mean, literally scalps. There are ponytails with the ribbons still in them, just piled on top of each other. There's another room with there's all the suitcases, another room with crutches and false teeth, another room with a huge glass cabinet just full of the shoes and the people. I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands, if not millions, of pairs of shoes. They just all gathered together and put them in a cabinet. And I think that Holocaust Remembrance Day is so important,
Mm.
to tell people the truth. That you've got these people who deny all of the Holocaust never happened. Yes, it did. You only need to go to Auschwitz, because something the Nazis did, believe it or not, was they photographed everybody. I mean, all these millions of people they were killing, but they took their photographs. And you walk down one corridor and they've got some of these photographs on display. And I always used to pick out one guy in particular because it was as if his eyes were following you down the corridor and he's just pleading for help. Get me out of here. So yes, so The Brutalist is. I mean, there's another film, Zone of Interest, about Auschwitz, which came out last year and is won some awards last year, which is now available to watch online. One of the things you see at Auschwitz, across the path from the camp, across the road, is a beautiful little house with a lovely garden, white picket fence, and a swimming pool in the back. That's where the commandant lived with his family and his children. And Zone of Interest, the film, focuses on the commandant's house and the children. It's a really great film. It's a horrific film because you know, literally the kids are playing in the garden, and over the garden fence you can hear the screams of people in the gas chambers. But the kids are playing football, kicking the ball around, or using it as a swimming pool. So Zone of Interest is a really hard-hitting, challenging film. Anything to do with Auschwitz is hard-hitting.
Yeah.
But in the light of Holocaust Remembrance Day, yeah, do go and see the Brutalist, and do go and see do search out Zone of Interest. It's online now.
Yeah.
It's available to stream.
Yeah, well, thank you, Andy. That's really interesting. I mean, I've never been to Auschwitz myself. I've seen some of
Yeah,
the photographs of what
yeah,
it looks like, and of course, you're absolutely right. It's good to remember this, and these
yeah,
films sort of give us, well, like you say, if we do not remember our history, we're doomed to repeat it.
yeah.
So it's important we remember this.
In actual fact, when you walk into the main exhibition at Auschwitz, there is a quote on the wall that says, "Those who forget the lessons of history are doomed to repeat them."
Yeah,
So even though you've never been, bravo for you for getting that quote out because
thank you.
you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And there are other films about. I mean, Schindler's List was on the TV
Oh
on the
yes.
Holocaust Remembrance Day, so that is actually on the iPlayer at the moment. I went to see Schindler's List a couple of times. Beautiful music by John Williams.
Yeah.
Actually filmed at Auschwitz.
Wow.
Um, and there's another film, if people are interested, called Son of Saul to seek out,
Okay.
where you have a father who's a captive. He's actually an inmate at Auschwitz, but he's been given the job of clearing up the bodies out of the gas chambers, taking the bodies. But he knows his son is in Auschwitz, but they've been separated. And he kind of wanders all over the camp looking for his son, basically. That's a really good film about the Holocaust. Another one, which is widely available, which you might have seen, people might have seen, is called The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. And this is where the commandant's son makes friends with a Jewish boy talking through the wire, through the barbed wire fence. And that has an unbelievable ending. There's quite a twist to that film. I don't want to spoil it for people, but The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, very, very moving. So there's been some really good films about Auschwitz
Hmm.
and the Holocaust. But certainly my top three would be Schindler's List, Son of Saul, and Zone of Interest.
Yeah.
Definitely. This one, as I say, we're talking about the Brutalist, is set in America. But you know, you get flashbacks to the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
actually,
we've already
one
mentioned some films then to watch at home.
yeah, actually, although one actually I know it's not quite directly linked to Auschwitz, but it's called the Defiant,
Yes.
I think, or Defiance by it included Daniel Craig plays the
Yes.
lead role.
Yes.
That was very good.
Really good film. Very good film. I'm trying. I mean, I'm just racking my brain now to think of others. I know there have been others, but you're absolutely right. Again, Defiant, really good film.
Mm.
Excellent film. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
So yeah. Um, you know, it doesn't put you in a good mood watching those films.
not
They always
really
make
now.
me feel angry, and every time I went to Auschwitz, I was feeling so angry. People say, "Oh, it shouldn't be there anymore." Yes, it should, because it's a reminder of what happened. You
Mm.
know, I mean, there's a concrete courtyard. There's a courtyard in Auschwitz in the main camp with a thatched wall at one end, and this is where they shot people. And you obviously can't see it, but they reckon that there's still dried blood on the other side of this wall where they shot so many people up against this wall. You know, people who were not gassed. And nearby is a cell block, and in that cell block is a cell belonging to a priest. A priest was put in there, and he's commemorated because he heard a Jewish guy screaming as they were dragging him away to be shot, and he called out to the guards. He said, "Look, take me, let him live, take me instead," which he did. And he was executed instead of this Jewish guy. And I've often used that when I'm preaching the gospel. You know, Jesus Christ died instead of us. And paid the price for what we've done wrong. But it is the most moving place to go. If you ever get the chance, Nathan, do go, because there's some beautiful places nearby to cheer you up afterwards.
Yeah.
Krakow's a lovely town, but
Yeah.
Auschwitz itself is definitely worth a visit. Yeah.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
shall we just very briefly run through the ones for home?
Yes, that would be good.
Okay, so very, very briefly then, because time's going. New film on Netflix called Missing. This is not a new film. This is from a couple of years ago. A young lady is on Facebook. The whole film is we see through the cameras of a laptop. It's one of those films. Or through Ring cameras, the Ring doorbell. We see the whole thing through cameras. Uh, and her mum goes off on holiday with a boyfriend. She goes to the airport to pick her mum up. Mum's not there. Turns out mum's been kidnapped. But there is a twist down the road. But we see the whole thing through cameras on their phone, through cameras on their laptop, through Ring doorbells. It's a really, really good, actually tense thriller. And once you get used to this idea that you're going to see everything through the lens of your laptop, through the lens of the mobile phone, through the lens of a video doorbell, it's a really good thriller. That's new on Netflix, as is a film called Champions. Champions is a great film. Champions is about a basketball coach who gets the sack because he's not been very good, played by Woody Harrelson. This came out about 3 years ago, I think. It's new on Netflix now. He's sacked from his job as a basketball coach with a particular team. And he's feeling frustrated and he's kicking his heels and he wants to get into basketball. And he's given the job of managing a team of people who are all handicapped in one way or another. Mostly they're sort of Down syndrome, And one of them's a rather large, rotund young lady, shall we say, and one of them can barely talk. And he's given the job of managing a team of disabled people. And he's kind of thinking, where am I going to go with this? How am I going to coach these people? They're all, useless. They're all disabled. But what happens is he grows to love, inevitably, he grows to love these kids. And they do go on to achieve a measure of greatness, winning the local tournaments and things. It's a lovely film. It's a really lovely. I had a Down syndrome niece, and Louise passed away, but she was just lovely. Louise loves to play games, and these are people. These are people who deserve to play basketball because they want to play basketball, and he has to shape and mold them into a team and get them playing and get them doing exercise and stuff. It's a very, very funny film, but it's called Champions. It's on Netflix, and I would really recommend that. Also on Netflix, new this week, is a film called The Last Bus. This is about a gentleman down the south of England who is travelling by bus to visit a friend in the north of England who's dying of cancer, and he just does the whole thing by different buses, and he becomes a cult celeb. Actually gets in the newspaper, based on a true story. So The Last Bus, that's on Netflix as well, and that's really good. And then if people haven't got Netflix, we've already mentioned one film that's on the BBC iPlayer, which is Schindler's List. Everybody should see Schindler's List. I mean, there's just, see Schindler's List. It's a film you must see. I've got one of these books, 1,000 movies you must see before you die. Or if you don't see 1,000 movies, see Schindler's List. It's one of Steven Spielberg's great achievements. And it really is, if you haven't seen it, it's desperately moving. But also in connection with the war is on BBC iPlayer. It's a film called, and I've got to have a deep breath here. Okay, you ready?
Okay.
It's called The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. Okay. Now, my daughter lives in Jersey, and we know that during the Second World War, the Channel Islands were the only bit of the British Isles that were occupied. The Nazis landed and took over Jersey, and they took over Guernsey. Okay. One night, a group of Nazi soldiers encounter a group of people who have been meeting clandestinely. They've been breaking the curfew, And they're out on the road. They shouldn't be out on the road. It's gone curfew time. And they say to them, "Who are you?" "Oh, we're just..." And one girl, off the top of her head, literally just says, "Oh, we're just returning home from our book club." "You have been to a book club?" "Yes, what book club is this?" And off the top of her head and without thinking, because they've actually been brewing alcohol illegally and stuff, she says, "Oh, it's called the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society." It just makes it up. And it's about a writer it's about a woman from the Channel Islands who leaves the Channel Islands and years later goes back and meets the Guernsey Literary Potato Pea and Pile Society. I've got to stop saying that. And finds out about their lives during the war. And some of them, now we know that sadly on the Channel Islands, there were some people who collaborated with the Germans in order to get a better life. So if you ran a shop, you might be tempted to collaborate with the Germans so that they would keep you keep your stocks high, or if you were hungry, you might be tempted to collaborate with the Germans so that they would give you food. You know, and she finds out that there was actually a collaborator in this group. Beautifully shot. Shows Guernsey in all its glory. I mean, Jersey and Guernsey are beautiful islands. I was, as I say, my daughter lives in Guernsey. I've been there so many times. Been to Guernsey. I preached in a lot of churches in Guernsey, and it shows the island beautifully. It's on the iPlayer, so it's available for everyone. So there you go. Avoid flight risk at the cinema, but go see The Brutalist. And at home, do watch Missing Champions, The Last Bus, and on the iPlayer, they're all on Netflix. And on the iPlayer, do watch the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society.
That is a long name.
And you probably will need a bit of pie when you've finished watching the saying that.
Is there not an acronym, perhaps? What would be the acronym for that?
I mean, no. I mean, I think when people were reviewing it, they would type out the title and then go GLPPPS.
Yeah, that's
what I did in my written review. I think I wrote out the whole title once and just went hereafter known as the GLPPPS. Bleeps.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Andy. Some great films there, and a couple, as we talked about, relating to the Holocaust and Auschwitz and all that, which is obviously quite timely. But thank you so much, Andy, for bringing us the latest in the world of cinema, and let us know what's at home.
My pleasure. Thanks, Nathan. God bless you. God bless Pure.
Did you know Pure 24/7 Radio has a shop? Well, we do. You can buy merchandise while supporting the work that we do here. Simply head over to www.pure247radio.org/shop. That's www.pure247radio.org/shop.